Hey, Phil Tenaya here from Matrix Goes to School, and I am here to shoot a short video today about using the Matrix to promote curiosity and learning in the classroom, particularly when we work with learners who get stuck from time to time. So I touched on curiosity in my last video on noticing in the classroom, and I wanted to go into a little bit more today. So, warning, geeky stuff ahead. So my question is, do you remember the day you showed up on the planet? Well, neither do I, but all we have to do is look in the mirror to know we arrived and we're still here. So we were born into the world. There's that me. And when we took our first breath, all of that sensory information just started to flow into us through our 5 senses. So I'm going to write senses up here. Flowed in, and it flowed down into us. Now, at that point, we didn't have any words or anything inside of us, so we couldn't sort experiences into things like good and bad, like and don't like, want and don't want. It was just pure experiencing. Kind of like you just hang out with any baby, and you can see that what starts to show up inside is this feeling, which we're going to call curiosity. I'm going to write that right down there because that is kind of what shows up inside of us in our minds. So even though there was no language, there was this feeling that we later attached the word curiosity to. So what happened then is we begin to explore and we begin to discover whatever's going on around us by using our 5 senses. So this curiosity thing sort of feels good, and it leads to interesting, engaging moves in the world around us. And of course, we have our toward moves. I'm going to write that out here. The things that we move toward, like our who's important to us and our what is important to us. And over here, at the same token, we can be moving away from internal experiences that we don't like. So the idea here is we learn by acting on the world. So acting on the world would go up here because that would be kind of a move toward whatever we wanted to learn. And the late great community psychologist Seymour Saracen was known for referring to learning as what he called a natural process which engenders and reinforces wanting to learn more. Now, if I translate that into matrix terms, I would say noticing, and now I'm going to write that word noticing because it is the me that does the noticing. What we are doing toward or away and what is happening as we are doing it leads to, get ready, here it comes, more learning. So the whole idea here is we're trying to move toward this thing called learning all the time. For noticing and learning to be productive, we will want this curiosity to be present to draw the learner, us or the student, into the process. So curiosity also draws us out of ourselves toward others. So up here we could go towards others, we could talk to others, right? We could play with others, and basically we can learn stuff from others. So as we grow, our curiosity combines with this thing called language, which also shows up inside of us. So these two things kind of get hooked up a little bit. And we learn to do something which everybody knows how to do, which is we come up here and we do this thing called ask questions. Okay, something that we all do, basic stuff. So when we're little, we ask lots of questions. As a matter of fact, we're very curious little critters when we're younger, and there's lots of questions coming out of us. And it kind of gets to the point where the adults that are around us eventually start saying things like, hey, stop asking so many questions. So that might show up down here, which is don't ask would show up. Actually, it shows up here first, don't ask. Those are words that people say to us. So what we then learn to do is we learn to ask less questions. Okay? And the curiosity then kind of gets damped down a bit so that we can comply with the rules of our homes and our schools. Now, all of these interactions are very useful for organizing our internal experiences, and we kind of organize them into things like wants over here, and then on the other side over here we have the don't wants. That's what we do with our minds, right? Don't wants end up over here, and so on and so forth. Now, the other thing that shows up is this thing called caution, right? That's what we learn. We learn to kind of slow it down a little bit. So that gets hooked up also with the don't ask so many questions. And maybe as this language evolves, we kind of know that other people are looking at us, especially our caregivers. So then maybe this thought that shows up inside of us is, I don't want to look dumb, might show up inside of us, some version of that. So now we can kind of get a little bit stuck on this stuff down here, which then leads to us having less of this feeling of curiosity and more of this cautious stuff. And then also we tend to kind of slow down on this exploring and discovering stuff. So experience, though, tells us that the learning process works best in situations that are interesting and engaging. So interesting and engaging goes over here. Things that are interesting and engaging, we like to move toward. And where learners feel safe enough to be able to go up here and ask these questions so they can figure stuff out. Now, while we may have different opinions about how the hows, most of us start out teaching the same way the kids do, with a mixture of curiosity, interest, and caution. It's a mix of all of this stuff, basically, showing up inside of us. So now here's the question again. How can you get this curiosity stuff going with stuck learners? Well, one way is to invite learners to use the matrix here. So when we do that, we can tap into our own curiosity and speak to the curiosity in our students. If they are there in front of us, they have already experienced this curiosity, so we're just trying to tap into it a bit to get it going. So if we notice that somebody's getting stuck, we could say something like, hey, you look like you're a little stuck right now. Would it be okay to try something? We can put what's going on onto the matrix here, and we can help you figure out what to do next. We then will use this visual model, perhaps we've even shown it to them already, and our words to influence them. So if we continue, we can now say, so now I see you sitting there. Now, does sitting there feel like a toward move? In other words, is it getting you somewhere, or is it an away move? Are you trying to move away from something you don't want? How does it feel to you right now? Now, of course, you can tell me or you cannot tell me. Now, the matrix would then be up on the board, or you can draw it in front of them, or they can even draw it themselves, because drawing is a toward move, and then you can also come over here and we can give them some credit for doing the drawing. So I like to start with the basic, so, I just noticed something else. You're here, so I'm going to give you credit. You came to school today. So that would be a toward move. And I'm guessing that you came to school for your education. Now, most kids will agree with me there. Very few don't. So that's very nice. Now, what you're doing right now, where would that go? Is that still on the toward side? Is it on the away side? What do you think? Now, each time the learner responds to a question, we will respond with this great word that we have all learned, which is yes. We will say yes to whatever they say. Because yes feels good. It feels good to say yes, and it also feels good to be receiving a yes. Now, also remember, we're in a classroom here. So once your teacher starts talking to you, if you're a student, in the context of school, something like uh-oh might show up inside of you, right? Maybe some uncomfortable stuff, especially when they start asking you questions. But now, when the kids see that the questions you're asking them are questions that they can pretty much answer on their own, they kind of relax a bit and they get in touch with their natural inclination to then have this curiosity stuff show up. So then each interaction helps them to get a little less stuck and a little more flexible. Now it's going to feel different for them, and now they can start to tap into that curiosity a little more and interest and notice what they are doing, including participating and taking all of this kind of stuck stuff with them and coming over here and continuing to do things that are going to get them more over here towards the stuff that's important to them. So basically then you're just approaching them with that same kind of curious noticing that you learned or that showed up in you way back when. And when we can let go of our expert mind, in other words, the mind that's filled up with all the things that we know, and just allow our beginner mind to show up inside of us, we can help the student get in touch with the same thing, if only for a moment or two. Thanks.